Good evening. My name is Miguel Moya. I am the president of El Paso Leadership Network. And tonight we are hosting our EPLN Leadership Series, where we are doing a panel discussion with several engineers who are from El Paso. We have Giselle Nevarez, Gara Solis, Julian Ronquillo, and Juan Garcia, who are here to talk about their experiences. So I have a set of questions that I'm going to be asking you. And let's just get started with the basics. Could you please tell me, where did you go to college? What did you study? And why did you choose to study the type of engineering that you majored in? We'll start with Giselle, and then we'll move to Gala, then Julian, then Juan.
All right. So, hi, I'm Giselle. I just graduated, the class of 2023 of the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in biomedical engineering. And I decided to go into biomedical engineering because I wanted to do work that impacted people directly, and that with medical devices, that was one way where patients are always at the end of your product. So that's kind of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, hello. So my name is Gala Solis. I'm currently a PhD student at Carnegie Mellon University. I got my bachelor's at the University of Texas at El Paso, mechanical engineering as well. And the reason why I chose to study engineering is because I've always kind of been like obsessed and fascinated with space. And so that was like my biggest drive into like getting into like understanding the mechanics of how to like build rockets. And from there, it just kind of trailed into like wanting to understand how materials work. And now I focus on metal 3D printing.
Hi, so my name is Julian Ronquillo. I just recently graduated from the University of Texas at El Paso, and I studied mechanical engineering there. And I'll actually be going into the industry after graduation. I'll be working with Procter & Gamble. And the reason why I decided to do engineering, specifically mechanical, was because I always wanted to go into like the manufacturing realm of the industry. And I knew that mechanical was such a versatile and very complex enough to be applied to like multiple industries, multiple companies, really anything. And so that's one of the main reasons why I chose mechanical engineering.
Hi, nice to meet you. Well, my name is Juan Garcia. I studied at the University of Texas El Paso. I graduated in December 2021. I'm currently working in the industry as a software engineer based in the front end. I'm currently working with MasterCard. I decided to study computer science. It wasn't my first decision. I used to be studying mechanical engineering. However, I was thinking it with one of my best friends, and he was studying software engineering. He was in his master's. And he was telling me, he was explaining to me what does he do and what he did in his internship with Intel. And it really interested me how I was going to impact the world without working with my hands, if that makes sense. So I decided to switch into software engineering in the middle of the semester, which was hard. However, it was fruitful. I'm currently happy with my life I'm having, and I'm open for any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about your background. It's great to hear that we have a diverse set of interests and experiences. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I would love to learn about the experiences that you had while you were in college and what it is that you're up to now. So could you please tell me what internships did you do in college? Did you perhaps do research? And where do you work now? And what is your role? Lastly, if you'd like to tell me a little bit more about your job, you can tell me what's the thing that you find most interesting about what you currently do. So we'll start off with yourself.
Yes, so that is going to be a long answer. I started my career development with undergrad research in a drug delivery and nanomaterials lab, where I worked with hydrogels, and we were loading up the hydrogels with a protein, and the goal was to accelerate bone growth, so like to promote healing of like fractures. And that was my first, that was a research that I did for like a little bit over a year, and that was really interesting. And then my first internship was a co-op, so it was a 6-month long internship with Kyocera Medical Technologies, and I worked on a partial knee replacement. So that was an implants company, and they did hip replacements, joint replacements, as well as spinal implants. And that was really cool because all of our implants were 3D printed, so 3D printed titanium. And I got to learn a lot about modeling and testing. And then my second internship was with Medtronic, and I worked on, I was in their pulse oximeter group, and we were working on a new pulse oximeter sensor that it's still under development, so I can't talk much about it, but that was really cool. And my last internship was at Origin Biomedical, and that actually turned into my full-time job. So that was an internship turned full-time, and I worked with cryopreservation bags and cell proliferation bags. So that's they're basically very fancy plastic bags that are used for very specific cancer treatment. So the company offers all the materials they would need from lab to giving that treatment to the patient, the entire line of products. And that's where I work now. And it's really interesting. And I've only ever worked in FDA regulated industries. So there's a lot of documentation that goes on, and it provides peace of mind knowing that what you're doing is like the right choice, and that you're always taking into consideration the safety of patients and how it impacts them. So every decision that I make, I'm always considering the risk, like how does that impact something else? And I also think that's the most interesting part, because you have to think through all the little loops. What could happen? What could go wrong? What if? But at the end of the day, it's very fulfilling because you know that what you're doing helps someone. So in my case, even though I'm mainly making plastic bags, those bags play a role in giving a cancer patient another option of treatment. So yeah.
That's such a great experience. Wow. Yeah, so I guess I want to say that like I started my experience like back in high school because I used to want to study biomedical engineering, and it wasn't until I did this program called the NASA High School Aerospace Scholars, where I actually spent like a full week in Houston at the Johnson Space Center, and we kind of did like a lot of like small projects where we were able to like code a little rover made out of Legos, so we can like have like a small like mission on Mars type of thing. And we had like building our own like small little rockets that we would like launch and stuff. And so it's kind of like talking to astronauts and stuff. It just kind of like made me realize that, wow, like eventually I want to become an astronaut. Eventually, like I want to be working amongst all these people that are working in space. And like, that's when I knew that was kind of like my passion. So when I started in college, my first job was actually working in a makerspace. And so I was helping out other students like work with their CAD models, and with their 3D printing parts. And it was just like polymer 3D printing that we were working with. And then it was also just like helping like use other types of fixtures and stuff for any type of little projects that they needed for classes. And I think because of like that 3D printing experience, it kind of got me like my first internship, which was at NASA at Marshall Space Flight Center. And that's kind of like where I really like focused on like using CAD NX specifically to like be able to like design a small like reaction control system, which is what kind of helps move your small spacecraft in space to like determine like if it's going to move to the right or to the left, So it's like it was pretty cool to be able to like work on an actual physical like small spacecraft. And after that, I ended up getting my second internship at Glenn Research Center, NASA too, in Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I kind of like started working on more like propulsion side of things. So I did a lot of like the thermal analysis on Orion that just launched into space with the SLS. I worked on that engine. So I did some thermal analysis on that. And then went back to school for a little bit. And this was for spring 2020. I went back to Marshall Space Flight Center. Again, this time I did a project that was completely different. It was still 3D printing, but this time I was working not with metals, but with like polymers. And I kind of realized like, yeah, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to work with polymers at all. And ironically, when I went back to school after that internship, my research was mainly focusing on polymers, like using polymer 3D printing, but these would be like used for, they're called liquid crystal elastomers, which they're soft robotics. So like depending on like when you're applying temperature or like light or different types of like sensing things that are sensed in the environment, they would react differently. So it was really cool research and stuff, but that's when I kind of realized like I wanted to focus more on like the metal 3D printing type of things. So my next internship, I ended up going to Honeywell FMNT, and that was for a summer in Kansas City. And it was like one of the best experiences where I was able to like physically like work on every single part of the project. So I started like with the CAD, did all the iterations of the design, and then from there learned how to like put it into like the software system for like the slicing, and then actually learning how to put it into the laser powder bed fusion machine, and then doing all the post processing, so like cleaning it and then doing the analysis and stuff. So it was like I got to see every single part of my project kind of being laid out. And that's when I knew like for a fact that I wanted to focus in metals. So then after that, I ended up getting another internship at this place called Launcher, which was a startup company in LA. And their main focus was working with 3D printed rocket engines. And it was the coolest thing ever because it was out of all 20 employees in the company, only 2 of us did the 3D printing. And so I helped with like procuring the machine. I helped with like buying everything for like the post processing. And like, so it's really cool because they launched this past October and their TDC, the thrust vector control system, was like their first iteration. So like we're me. So it's like, it feels really like, I guess like satisfying to know that something that you worked on as an intern was actually somewhere in space right now. Like it just feels like awesome. But yeah, and so after that, kind of like after I experienced that, I realized like that I wanted to do my PhD. And it's funny because I tell myself that I wasn't ready to work a 9-to-5 job. So I ended up like choosing something where I would be working 24/7 instead. So so during the process of my application for my PhD, I ended up getting this fellowship called the GEM Fellowship. And the way that works is that you have to work for a sponsor employer, and then you get selected by a university. And so I was selected by Carnegie Mellon, and my employer sponsor was Aerospace Corporation in LA again. But before I went to Aerospace Corporation, during the time that I was waiting to like start my PhD program and waiting to hear back from the universities, I did this co-op at MIT Lincoln Labs in Boston. And that's where I kind of worked on more like satellites type of stuff. It wasn't much like metal 3D printing, but it was like focusing on like a lot of CAD. And I really appreciated like having that skill of like being really good at CAD. So it was a great experience, very different from like everything else that I had done. And then finally after that, that's when I went to Aerospace Corporation and I spent that summer there working with like their DED, which is directed energy deposition. And that's like basically large scale 3D printing for metals. And that's kind of like what I focus now on my research. I do more of like the in-process monitoring to like check the temperature changes while I'm actually printing. And the reason why that's important is because depending on the temperature profiles that you're getting in your metal parts, basically that can affect like any type of defects that you get. So it's very important when you apply this to industry to know what's happening inside like your actual solidifying metal. So that's kind of like the main focus that we're like doing right now in my research group. Yeah, that was a handful.
Tough to follow that one. Yeah, so again, my name is Julian Ronquillo. I'll go pretty quick. I'll give you a quick rundown of my industry experience. So my first co-op was actually with Johnson & Johnson in San Angelo, Texas. I was working at a manufacturing facility where they manufactured sutures. And I was pretty much running a line of about 30 to 40 employees. And in some situations, like operating the whole manufacturing floor by myself, because this was like all during COVID. So a lot of the engineering managers or the supervisors like weren't able to go to work. So they ended up putting me in there doing 12-hour shifts, which was kind of rough at first, but it was a really good learning experience. And then just being able to see the engineering processes within these manufacturing facilities was really eye-opening. And what kind of steered me in the direction that I'm in now. After that internship, I actually ended up going, or after that co-op, I ended up going with Walmart on their product supply chain team. So there I had a product management role. And essentially what I was doing was creating and designing a labor management tool for their warehouse management system. So essentially what this tool is going to be used for was to pretty much properly staff all the machines that they're launching into these next generation facilities that they're planning to launch within the next couple of years. So it was a matter of trying to be as efficient when it came to staffing and just labor management in general. And based off our calculations, mine and my manager's calculations, it's set to save the company about $32,000 a year per facility. So just because of little changes, like it was pretty impressive to see how much things could actually change when it came to finances. And after that, I decided to go back to the manufacturing route. And I ended up working with Honeywell FMNT as well. They work with the Department of Energy, and it's a really interesting industry because it's pretty much creating and manufacturing the non-nuclear missile components of most of the nuclear missile arsenal that the United States government has. So it was a really eye-opening experience because, I mean, it required like a strict background check. It required like a top secret security clearance. And there I actually had a systems engineering role. So essentially what I was doing was modeling the engineering processes that were going on within the facility, because they were trying to transition from a paper-based system to a completely digital system. So it was pretty much gathering all the information of how this engineering process works, whether like there was notes from the engineer, whether there was specific like databases, specific instructions, specific, just all the information you need to pretty much be able to read it like from top to bottom and know how to run a machine or know how to run a specific process. So a lot of really interesting experiences throughout my time in college. But my first experience with Johnson & Johnson is kind of what led me to where I am now. I recently accepted a job with Procter & Gamble. So I'll be working as a process engineer at one of their facilities out in St. Louis. And yeah, so it was because of that first manufacturing co-op that I had that I decided to go into manufacturing again. And ultimately what I want to do is take like the managerial route. I feel like one of my strong suits is like working with people, like leading groups, leading teams. And I feel like with companies like Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, that's like very, very manageable. And from what I've heard, like speaking to the managers themselves, like it's a really good experience. So that's kind of the route that I'm trying to take now.
Hey again. So I started working with software since I was, let me repeat back again. So when I was in high school, I used to be working on a project that was based, it was a regional project, and it was a competition, and it was pretty much the building robots that you need to do. So those building robots, you need to compete to each other there were several tasks that you had to do. So I remember that we need to grab a ball, and then we need to throw it away, and then we need to make a 3-point basketball. And we started like doing a lot of stuff while we were in the competition. But I didn't work in the business. I didn't work in the engineering area. I worked in the business area, which for me was weird because when I was a kid, I always thought that I was going to be working with business and management and stuff like that. But when I was in that project, I started like feeling how the engineering works, how everything is being assembled, and why everything has to make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't work. And I started like having that idea. And then I went into college, and in college, I started with mechanical engineering, and I like it, but it wasn't a right fit for me, just because it wasn't what I think it was. I thought it was more software related. I don't know why. And then I switched to software engineering, and into that time, I got into a Excite summer internship that I think they still have it in University of Texas El Paso. But pretty much you let and teach kids from kindergarten to high school how to work together, how to involve themselves, how to work into engineering. There were several tasks that we gave them. We gave some obstacles, and they had to build a bridge, and that bridge has to weigh at least 50 pounds. So we were giving those challenges to them. And after that, I switched to computer science technical support, also at the University of Texas El Paso. I was part-time while I was in college, and I was configuring, managing, and also pretty much hardware and software updates for all the computers in the university, and pretty much based on the College of Science of Engineering. And then I got the opportunity of being in the College of Science as a webmaster, and I started working firstly as a front end. And working as a front end, I started like feeling how the apps work, how like pretty much the skeleton, and how does it interact, and how do I need to work with the dean or the vice president of the college in order to keep like all the web pages in order. And that gave me the confidence in order to jump into a neuroscience research lab, also the University of Texas El Paso. It was on summer, and I got back my classes from mechanical engineering because I was developing a maze, and we had several rats that we were giving several nicotine. So we need to see and learn about the reaction. So I need to develop a maze on an AutoCAD. And after that, I had to 3D print it. And since we were in a home-based 3D printer, I had to find a way in order to design a full maze, which was like, I remember it was 40 centimeters by 60 centimeters from a home 3D printer, which is by like 10 centimeters square. So we had to design a way to create the maze, and the best way to do it was pretty much a Lego. So we decided making Legos. And after that, we need to create a software for that hardware. So we need to find how to trap it's in Spanish electrones, which are from the brain of the rat. So we need to catch it directly into the machine, and we needed to develop an application. So we talked and we made several meeting discussions, and the best idea that we got was creating into MATLAB an application based pretty much on MATLAB, which will be giving basic inputs, and you will be having basic outputs. And with those basic outputs, we have to create a database system and store all those outputs into the database system. And that gave me a lot of experience from backend and also full stack development. And then I was, after finishing my degree, my girlfriend had to move to Washington, D.C. area, and I didn't want to lose her. So basically, I was looking for her, and I got into Washington, D.C. I started applying to all the jobs possible. I remember applying even like, even the worst employment that you can think. I was applying to that one because I really wanted to be there in Washington, D.C. And by working hard, by perseverating, by applying, by learning about the application, by learning about my mistakes, I had the opportunity to have an internship, to have an interview with MasterCard, and pretty much they offered me the position, and they told me, you have two options. Either you go to St. Louis or you go to Arlington. And Arlington is pretty much 5 minutes away from DC. And I was jumping and I was happy. And then I got the job position, and my daily basis are pretty much meetings Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And in those meetings, we try to talk what we did the day before. So what did you do? Pretty much I work on this software update. We currently work on an expense management application for all banks in the United States. So we were currently looking for bugs, software update or updates that the client wants. Either the button doesn't work, either the client wants to have a new sign dollar that we needed to add into the application. So they are based on features, bugs, and also spikes. The spikes are pretty much long story, a huge update that we wanted to do, and then we needed to divide it in several tasks. And after those daily meetings, I start working on my code bases. I currently use framework. I currently use Angular and IntelliJ for frameworks and for front end, and also for coding. I use TypeScript, which I pretty much say that is JavaScript with a lot of functions and a lot more libraries. And I try to give Mexican culture to MasterCard. So I push all the colleagues and all the staff members in MasterCard to do several events. So last time on Cinco de Mayo, they really wanted to do a taco street, and we made a happy hour. I brought some tacos, we brought some beers, and we were like the VP, the manager, the whole expense management team. And they're like dividing several business, and there were also the business MasterCard relation, and there were also the staff from MasterCard. It was a full party right in the place, and we were all happy. I shared completely my culture. They learned from Mexico. They gave a little piece of what Mexico is, and we were working, and it was one of the best experience I could ever give to one of my colleagues. So yeah, that's pretty much my daily basis in my huge life in a short term.
You can't take us anywhere because we're always throwing parties everywhere. So.
For real. That's great. And thank you so much for sharing all of the depth of experience that you all have. I found it so fascinating how you can end up doing a bunch of different kinds of things with a degree in engineering. And I think what I found most interesting is that Gala and Julian, for example, they both studied mechanical engineering, but I've heard complete different stories as to what their trajectories look like. So that was really good to hear. Now, I would love to not just hear about what you've done, but also the things that you've learned along the way that have developed your perspective on engineering, just so that we can help people in our audience figure out how it is that they can best prepare themselves to become engineers. So having said that, could you please share what do you think are the greatest challenges and obstacles to becoming an engineer, and how is it that you can best prepare yourself in high school and in college in order to become an engineer?
Wow. So I think being an engineer has a lot of challenges. One of them is that it's one of the most technical fields. So there's a lot of information that you will need constantly, and you might not know it all. So it's about knowing how to find the information that you will need, and that I think asking questions. I know everyone tells you to ask questions, but I can't stress it enough. Ask questions. Even if you're not 100% sure how to do something, ask. If you did it but you want someone to review it, ask someone. If someone's doing something really cool and you've never seen it done before, ask if you can watch how they do it. That is the best way to learn something. And I think as a high school student, to prepare yourself for engineering is to just see something around your house or on the street and think about how it works. Because almost every product that you have, actually everything that you have that you're touching at one point passed through the hands of an engineer. So it's a really good way of seeing products, seeing how things are made, because like there was an engineer behind it. And for me, for medical devices, since it's a very niche area of engineering, I went to the doctor's office, and then I started realizing that everything, so let me rephrase that. So once I started thinking that everything around me was touched by an engineer, and then I went to a doctor's office and saw like all the syringes that they use, even just your heart monitor, the bed itself, everything was also touched by an engineer there. So then you start wondering like how things work. So along with that, and like just staying curious is really important, and never settling with knowing enough. Like there's always more to learn. And that's the key to staying, like, I want to say sharp, is to continue learning something new. And I guess one of the biggest challenges that I experience now as an engineer is that there's different ways of doing things, but that doesn't mean either of them is wrong. So it's about choosing what method and what approach to do something would be the best or the most efficient. And I never know the answer to those things. So reach out to your mentors, your manager, or anyone that has a little bit more experience, and ask them how they would do it. So again, just about being resourceful and talking to others.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that too, because like asking questions is probably like the most important thing that you could do. And also like another thing about engineering is like, it's not about finding like the answer. It's about like knowing the right questions to ask to know what kinds of problems you're trying to solve in the first place. And like one thing that I really wish that I like did when I was like when I was in high school is that like putting myself like to work more like on the hands-on type of projects, like not just sticking to like just reading something or like trying to like see someone else do it, but also like you have to put yourself out there and like actually like get your hands dirty, right? Like that's the best way to learn anything, is to like do it yourself. And like it's like really awesome to see that like around you, like everything like basically like everything that you see was used for another type of like use before. So like NASA, for example, they invented like the Velcro, and now Velcro is used in literally like your Skechers shoes and stuff like that. So it's just like things that are invented for one certain type of technology can eventually be manipulated to be used for something else. And if you can understand that, it'll be easier to like find solutions to problems that you didn't think you could solve with like some other technology that already exists. Another thing is just like imposter syndrome will most definitely affect you, and that's something that you can't avoid, especially like coming from a Hispanic community where like you go out into a workplace where you're surrounded by people who don't look like you, don't talk like you, they come from completely different backgrounds. And it doesn't mean that you are any less at all. It just means that you have this different type of skill that you can add to their work group because you come from a completely different background that they don't understand maybe like exactly how you were brought up, but because of your experiences, maybe you can add so much more value to a research group or some type of like technical like problem or something like that. So it's like always be aware that no matter like how different you feel from everyone else around you, like it's definitely, you could use it definitely like to your advantage, basically.
Yeah, something I always try to point out and try to do myself is put yourself in situations that you're not really comfortable with, situations that you don't know anything about, that you feel like you might struggle with. Always try to take those opportunities, because at the end of the day, you're probably going to run into it in the future, or something's going to happen and eventually you'll know how to deal with that situation. So that's one of the first things that I like telling everybody. But I think one of the constant struggles I see like with like college students and definitely like high school students is that a lot of students don't know exactly what they're going to do when they do become engineers. A lot of people go in with the idea of really not knowing exactly what an engineer does, where an engineer can work. So I think something that you should take into consideration is start early and start looking at jobs that exist. Like, what are you actually going to be interested in? Because you don't want to end up somewhere where you hate your job and you're just working 9 to 5 and you hate the company and you hate everything. So it's important to do research like beforehand, like even when you're deciding like what type of engineering you're going to do. Because if you want to do like management, if you want to do like industrial, if you want to do even sales, like those opportunities are available to engineers. And I think a lot of people don't even know about half the jobs that exist. And so I think it's important to start early, start looking at jobs that exist, jobs that might interest you. That way you can like pave your way and like create this path that's going to lead you to where you want to end up. And you're not lost when you graduate and when you don't know where you want to work or what type of role you want. So I think overall it's just a matter of like planning your whole like academic career, because engineering isn't something that you can necessarily just jump into and not take serious. There is a lot of planning that's involved, and there's a lot of steps that have to be taken before you complete everything. So always pre-plan and always put yourself in situations that you're not comfortable.
I will say, like as feedback, you need to know that you don't know. I think it's one of the most important things. Also, like college doesn't prepare you for work. College prepares you to know how to work for the work, or they just give you the tools. Just college just give you basically the tools, and you need to know how to use those tools in real life situation. Because when I got into MasterCard, for me, they gave me a laptop. You need to set it up. How? I mean, I did it in freshman year. How do I set up a computer? It has to be really simple, right? No, it takes time. It takes more than 6 hours. You need to look for right programs, right libraries, right time, and also ask questions. Like, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. And if you go with an open mind, instead of going for into a defense action that I need to solve this, or going into attack action that this isn't solved, go with an open mind and let's see how to solve it. Let's look for quality, not quantity. Because if we try to do a lot of things at the same time, if we don't, like Julian said, if we don't have a path, we will be without knowing what to do. And being out of college is really hard. I know that once you're in college, it's like, yes, I want to graduate. I want to put that Post Malone song. I want to say, hey, congratulations, everyone. I want to hug my friends. I want to stay with my family. But the next day, It's waking up like what to do. Do I want to be in master schools? Am I prepared to be in master schools? Because that's another topic. Not everyone is prepared to be in PhD. A lot of people need to have preparation before. You need to know what you want to do. Because if you go directly from kindergarten to PhD without not knowing what you like, then what you're doing. You need to step out, like stop for one moment and see, is this path good for me? Is this path bad for me? Like when I got the decision that I was going to DC, it just wasn't based only on my heart. It was based also on which is the best approach in this situation. And for me, the best approach was going to DC. And now I'm going to get married in 2 weeks. So it's not about money, it's not about intelligence, it's not about being better than anyone. It's just be better than yourself, be better than you yesterday. The one that you see yesterday before you woke up or before you got into bed, wake up, see yourself and be better than the last person you saw. I think it's the best thing I can see. And don't stress about finding a job. I mean, you'll find it. I mean, even though you don't find the job you wanted, I know everybody wants to be in the high tech. Everybody wants to be on the best companies. But I started working at a cafe bar when I was 15. I didn't start where I am right now. I started working. I woke up like at 3 a.m. to go to college. I drove up like for 3 or 4 more hours. I mean, you need to give sacrifices in order to have whatever you want in life. And also, that's a good thing. Learn about the frustration and embrace it. Embrace when you're sad. Embrace when you're frustrated. Embrace when you're stressed. Because those situations, those feelings are for something. And if they give you those feelings, it's for survival purposes. So if you're sad, you know what makes you sad. So you know if you're gonna keep in the cycle or you're gonna be following go or you're gonna be straightforward. So don't stress out if you don't find a job. Don't be sad if you're not in a high tech. I promise you that if you study hard on what you like, you are gonna be embraced with whatever you want. Like, and also if you wanted to be a bartender, be the best bartender in the whole world. And I can promise you, you're gonna be happy.
Great. I really appreciate all of the wisdom that has been shared by all of you in regards to the experiences that you've had and the perspectives that you have. So having said that, I have one final question, and we can keep this brief since a couple of you have already touched on these ideas. And all I want to know is, how is it that your identity, perhaps as an El Pasoan, a Latino, a woman, a first-generation college student, impacted your journey to become an engineer, whether it's in a good way or in a bad way? And we'll leave that as the last question.
I think being like a Latina in engineering it's a position where you have to make yourself known. So I on one of my first ever internships, there was only 2 other women. My first co-op, there was only 2 other women in the entire company. It was myself and another engineer. Everyone else, it was a smaller company, but everyone else was a man. So I was in a lot of meetings where I was the only girl. And I wasn't even an engineer yet, I was an intern. But you have to, even if you don't have the confidence yet, you have to go in there and act like you have the confidence to be in that room as well. So if you have a question, don't wait until the meeting's over to ask the question. Ask it. Raise your hand. If you don't understand something, ask for clarification. If you have a new idea, say the idea. It's about having confidence, even if you don't think you have it. Just go for it. And it varies because every company is different. As that wasn't my first internship. My second internship, it was a complete opposite. I had meetings where it was all women, which had also never happened to me before. And it was really cool seeing women in leadership, vice presidents being in like at a huge med tech company. There were women and there were moms, and I think the representation that was missing was a Hispanic representation. So even though they were women, they still did not look like me or talk like me, and that can be a little intimidating. But you have to look at it from the standpoint that that is my spot to take. That there isn't any Latino women in the board or the leadership team. Well, that is for me to take it and be the Latina woman in the leadership board. So it serves as a motivation to make sure that you make your space. You take the space that you want to take, and you have to go in with confidence. And it's really hard. I say like it's easy. It's not. It's really hard to go into a room and take your space, but it's the only way that we can move forward, and that you can that your voice can be heard is if you raise your voice to begin with. So that is like, I think one of the biggest things at my current company is the similar story. There's a lot of women. I'm the only Hispanic engineer in the entire team, which is crazy. And I work, so I'm in product development, and I work with manufacturing a lot and with processes a lot. And you go into the manufacturing floor, and there are a lot of Hispanic women in the manufacturing floor, but why not in the development team? You know? So then you go, that's where it's like, that's my shot. I'm going to be the Hispanic woman in the development team. So that's like my outlook on it. And it can be a little difficult, but like Julian said, put yourself in uncomfortable situations, and that's where you grow the most. So even if I'm uncomfortable knowing that like there isn't anyone there like me, well, now I'm there so that if another intern comes in, I'm the representation they wanted to see. So yeah.
That was really good advice. And like also to kind of like add on to that, it's just one word of advice that one of my mentors told me was that if you don't think that there is space at a table for you, you bring your own chair. You know, like you make space for yourself at a table, because sometimes people will legitimately try to shut you out just because of the color of your skin or your gender or whatever you try to identify yourself as. And you have to, like you said, like make yourself known. Like you really have to make space for yourself. And for me, like it's a very big driving force, my identity, especially being here at Carnegie Mellon, where it's predominantly a white institution, and there's also a lot of Asians, and very, very rarely do I ever see any Hispanics. And it came to the point where like it was very important for me to have my community, because it does get pretty lonely sometimes. It was very isolating my very first semester. And the way I started to like kind of like expose myself in order to feel like I'm included in a community, I joined this group called the Latinos Graduate Student Organization, and I became a part of the board. So, you know, I tried to, you know, become more of like working on like the outreach and like going to like conferences such as SHIP, where like the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, where we can talk to other students. And I'm like, hey, like come to Carnegie Mellon, like we're a very good school and we're looking for more diversity. Like we need to have more Latinos here because we need to increase that representation. And it wasn't only at Carnegie Mellon where I decided to like, you know, do something for minorities, but it was also like when I was at UTEP, I was the founder and the president for this organization called Women in Aeronautics and Astronautics, which is basically for like women and gender minorities who are interested in aerospace or like any type of aeronautics and anything that was like space related. Whether it was like working on like astronaut suits or like doing robotics or coding or like just the manufacturing side of things. It was good for me to like make that community of like women who are very interested in this, because like it just becomes very niche. Like when you find like when you're trying to find women in engineering, it's already such a small percentage, and then you try to find like women who are interested in aerospace specifically, the percentage is even smaller. So it's like having that kind of community, and we were able to like help other women like find like I guess like projects or like competitions where like it was just like an all women group, and it was like kind of like cool because like we're out here, like, even if we're not winning first place, we're out here being a representation of like, yeah, like it could just be like a very big group of like just women and some men who are allies. And it's like great. It makes you feel like, yeah, like it doesn't matter like where we're coming from, like we can all do the exact same thing. And it's just kind of like, it's very like validating. And like also like during my internships, I also have like a couple of times where like, yeah, like it's only like us, it's only like a lot of men and there's only like 2 other women. And it's like during my research group at Carnegie Mellon, I was giving a presentation the other day, and I looked at the crowd, and I was quite literally the only woman and the only Latina in the entire room. Like everyone else was a white man, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like it just feels kind of like stressful. But yeah, that's like the biggest advice is like definitely like if you don't think that there is space for you at the table, like always bring your own chair and always like make sure that people don't judge you by like where you come from, but they judge you by like the product that you give or how well you're doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll probably be repeating a lot of what's already been said. You definitely feel like an outsider when you enter the industry, when you go to pretty much any company, because outside of El Paso, any city, majority of cities have a small Hispanic population. And so it's kind of difficult to find a community at work. It's difficult to find a community in a new city. So it's just a matter of, again, like putting yourself in situations that you're not comfortable with. Like Gala said, like going to like things that maybe you weren't invited to, or putting yourself in situations where it's not common for a Hispanic person to be there. Or like whether it's a position, whether it's a social event or whatever it is, a lot of times you do feel like an outsider. So it's just, I think it's more of a mentality thing, because at the end of the day, you earn that spot. You're at the same position that these other people are at. It doesn't matter what school you went to. It doesn't matter what background you have, what country you're from. Like you're in the same spot. You're just as competitive as they are. So you know you deserve that seat. And honestly, I think something that you always have to take into consideration is that you don't know anybody like an explanation, or like you don't have to like prove yourself to show that you're worthy. Like you know your worth, you know you're an engineer, you know you're there for a reason, you're smart, you know what you're doing. And so I think it's a matter of just getting past that mental phase of like I don't belong here. Once you're past that, you feel like you will rule the world because you're the only Mexican there. Because people will start appreciating you more. People like they start appreciating your culture too if you're like open about it. And so I think a lot of times it's just like owning your heritage, owning your personalities, owning who you are, and being as comfortable as you can, and not being afraid to like show your true colors. So yeah.
For me, I was born in Ciudad Juarez, so pretty much my kindergarten until high school was in Mexico. So for me, growing up in Juarez and also in El Paso, was great. I thought that I knew the world until I got here. It's weird and it's amazing, and also it can be overwhelming how the world works actually, like in real life situations. Once you get out of college and you move to another city, it's amazing, but it's also sometimes overwhelming. So for me, I will say like one of the best songs that I have heard is move to North Dakota or move to Texas, but leave before you are soft, and move to New York City or move to Chicago, but leave before your heart. And I guess you need to be moving around. You need to be learning. There are like a lot of experiences out there. I know that El Paso can give you a lot of opportunities, and that can be like the base so you can start growing up your entire career. El Paso is the best area. For me, working in the industry was overwhelming because I got up from a public college. I was working with people from Harvard, people from MIT, people from Ivy League schools, and those are overwhelming situations that even though you are in the same degree as them, you feel overwhelmed. Or I felt overwhelmed. I felt overwhelmed do the status of the university, do if I'm enough, all the important symptoms. But let me tell you, you are the same as those guys. I mean, you are studying the same degree as them. You have the same paper as them, just different universities, different perspectives, not bad. But you are enough and you are even better than you think. You don't have an idea. If you feel that you're in a cage and you cannot get from Juarez or El Paso, believe me, you can. It's really easy. And if you feel that you need to come back to El Paso, go ahead and do it. It's open arms. It's where you grow. It's where your family is. But remember, there's only one life, and you need to learn about everything and everywhere. So if you're in El Paso, do you think you're going to be having the best China food? Or you need to go to a restaurant in Thailand where it's just like $2, but it's the best Thai food in the world? You need to be having those little experiences, and none to tell others, just to make yourself happy. And if you don't like to travel, do whatever you like. Do whatever you like, and I'll promise you, you'll be happy.
Amazing. Well, thank you again to everyone for sharing all of your perspective. It's definitely uplifting to hear. What I loved from what you said, Juan, was that saying about moving around and getting these experiences in different places. And I think that's also reflected in the room right now. I mean, everyone here is in different parts of the country. Giselle's in Austin, Julian's in El Paso, Gala is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Juan, you're in Arlington, Virginia, I believe. I'm in Miami, Florida, yet we're all coming here to this platform so that we can all talk and share some insight to all of the members of El Paso Leadership Network and all of our community as well in El Paso, and all of our Latinos as well. I think that's so wonderful. So thank you so much for your time. I know we stayed on here for a full hour, and I think it was a pretty good conversation. So I very much appreciate it. I hope that we can stay in touch, and I hope that all the information that you all shared was useful. It was definitely interesting. So again, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. All right, I'll see you guys later. Peace.